Hello, my name is Michelle Byrne and I'm a full-time artist, and I'm doing this series of studio tips for other artists and anyone that wants to follow along on my painting journey. So this is studio tip number 3, and it's all about the color red. For those of you who have been following along on my journey, know that I just moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So this has been a major life change. I moved my whole life. I sold my home, I sold everything I owned, I sold almost all of my paintings, and I moved to Santa Fe 6 weeks ago. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and I was a Girl Scout, I was a tomboy, and I always wanted to be a cowboy. So the few short weeks that I've been living here, I'm just absolutely in heaven. I think I'm a Southwest desert girl at heart. The sky is big, it's huge, the clouds are amazing, and it's overwhelming. So I've been going out painting with friends and with the Santa Fe planarians, and it's just been so exciting, all this new inspiration and new colors, and I'm just loving it. So these are a few of the paintings that I've been working on since I moved here. The first one is called Big Red, in a place called Castle Ranch right near Santa Fe, and the Red Rocks near Ghost Ranch. And they're more orange where the sun hits them, but when they're in the shade, it's a cooler red, so we'll talk about that as well. And another painting I worked on was this one. This is the tea house on Canyon Road, and it was all full of red umbrellas. So now I'm going to show you how I mix a lot of these reds. So you can see here my tubes of paint and some of the colors I used for this project. And I use Cobra water mixable paint, which I absolutely love because it's so easy to travel with. But what's really great about it also is it's made by Royal Talens, so I can use Cobra, and they also make Rembrandt, which is also a great paint. They're both creamy, same consistency, wonderful colors. So if I would run out of a tube of, say, this phthalo green in Cobra, or maybe they don't have it in Cobra, I can use Rembrandt up to 30% of traditional oil paint along with it. The first two colors I'm going to talk about are Madder Lake, and that is the same as the Alizarin Permanent, and the next one is Permanent Magenta. So Madder Lake is a cool semi-transparent color, and Permanent Magenta is a cool transparent color. So if I add a little bit of white, okay, there's the Madder Lake. If I add a little bit of white to it, you can see that it's not as it's not a real bright color. And if I add white to the Permanent Magenta is just a punchier, much punchier color. So if I use some of that, you see when it's thinned out, when it's scraped, how it glows? Isn't that pretty cool? I love that. So it is a transparent color, and that's why it does that. And then if you add white to it, you get this beautiful pink. Look at that. And if I add some cobalt blue to that, look at that really nice violet color you can get. So look at the variations with the Permanent Magenta. Transparent, add white, add cobalt blue. Now if I add some cobalt blue to the Madder Lake, it's not quite as exciting, but it gives a kind of a mauvish, grayish color. So those are the two different dark, cool reds that I use. Next on my palette is Transparent Oxide Red. Obviously that's a transparent color and it's warm. If I drag this down here and scrape some of that away, you can see how that glows. So it's almost an orangey sienna color. And if I add white to that, it kind of deadens it a little bit, but it's still a nice color. So if I'm out painting the red rocks, I could start with that color and add some cadmium or permanent orange to it, just the pure color. Add a little more of that. See how that, it kind of tones it down a little bit, and if I add some yellow ochre to it, it brings on a whole different color. I can add some red to it. So you can do a big variety of things with that color. And if I add some of that violet that I just mixed a while ago for the shadows maybe, look at that contrast. Or add some white to that. So there's it's just unending combinations you can use for this. So that's kind of what I use a little bit in the red rocks. And then next is Cadmium Red Light. Now that's an opaque color, and it's on the warm side because it has more yellow in it. So that is very reddish orange. And when you scrape it away, it doesn't do much because it's not transparent. It just kind of stays the same. But I can add some white to that, which I don't do that often because the white just makes it dull. I might use that color for a distant flag. You know, if it's a flag in the sunlight but it's far away, I might use that. Okay, but if I add cadmium yellow deep to it, it turns orange, but it never will get as orange as a permanent orange will. So that's why I keep permanent or cadmium orange on my palette. Now for the umbrellas where it was really bright, underneath there I would take the cadmium red light, add a little bit permanent magenta to it to punch it up. Can't really see much there. And sometimes I add some permanent orange to it. And let's see, a little bit more magenta. So for underneath the umbrella, look at that combination together, just like that's getting pretty bright. And I don't add white to it to punch it up. I might add lemon yellow, which is a cool color, but it still brightens it up a little bit. So I just work and work and work and mix all these colors red together until I get the glow that I get. But in order to make the red glow, you have to put something dark next to it. So that's where by putting that next to it, it could be the shadows. And then if I just put the white like I did on the top of the umbrella, I'm mixing up some white with a little bit of permanent magenta and a little bit of lemon yellow, and just put that across there. See how that light makes this pop, and then the dark would be the shadows. So those are kind of the basic colors for the umbrella right there. And lastly, of the reds on my palette is Cadmium Orange or Permanent Orange. It is a semi-transparent warm color. Red rocks, if I mix some transparent Oxide Red with it, and I like to keep the strokes not perfectly, aligned like that. So that's one thing you can do. You can add some some yellow ochre to it, which I always have on my palette as well. And that just warms it up a little bit. I can add some, lighten it up a little bit with some white and some lemon yellow. See what that does, maybe the sun's hitting the rocks. Drag it down this way. And then if I want to put a shadow on that, I can use some of this violet that I made with the Madder Lake and the white, because it's more of a not such a bright violet. So if I want to do that in the shadow, maybe I need that a little bit darker. So when I'm out painting, it's more of an intuitive thing, and I just keep going on top of each other. And sometimes if you drag the knife lightly across it, different things happen. And if you scrape away, it makes different things happen. If you use this squeegee, you might get some really cool transparent colors. So, it's transparent is nice too, to have some of those things amongst that. And some of this orange I could scrape here. So it's just a lot of this back and forth and scraping and reapplying. I can't tell you how much I scrape things off. Sometimes when you scrape, you get really, really nice colors. And it's okay to leave them there. It doesn't all have to be thick, juicy paint. So anyway, and then just for fun, this really violet color, just drag that through there, see what happens. So just experiment. Use your knife, scrape, pull, whatever you need to do to make things fun and interesting. So for this wonderful red glow down here underneath, the sun hits the top and bleaches it out, and then this glow underneath here, for that I use cadmium red light and add a little bit of cadmium orange, sometimes a little lemon yellow in there also, and sometimes permanent magenta. So I just kind of mix and mix and mix until I find something, and how it compares and contrasts to what's around it makes a big difference. But those are the basic colors for the glowing red. The sun is beaming in down through here, and it's hitting the top of this umbrella, and it's also hitting this one back here. So back here, because it's so far away in the sunlight, I made it, it's almost white. You know how sometimes the sun hits something and it's so bright and so white that it just glistens in the light? So that one back there is basically white with a tiny bit of lemon yellow, because lemon's a cool color, and a tiny bit of primary magenta. Up through here it has less white in it, because I really want this stripe of sunlight to come beaming down here through here and strike the waiter on the top of the head, and it goes down into the conversation that they're all having here. So that's the main focus on this painting, and that's where all the brightest brights are against the darkest darks, the brightest colors, and the sunlight beaming through the umbrella is kind of warming up the people underneath here, because this is all about celebration and what it is to be human and to be connected. That's what this painting is about to me. And the sun is actually coming in onto their table, so it's making everything glisten. And this is where all the activity is and all the conversation. This man is probably talking to the waiter. I like to make up little stories. So that's the focal point. And then as you go down to the bottom, there's reds in there, and I'm hoping you don't get a glare. And this also has a lot of layers. I had this brilliant bright red, and it looked really bad. So I sanded it all down, scraped it all off, and put other layers of paint on there. And a lot of times I'll take one of these tools, it's a catalyst, and I'll just scrape into that while it's wet, so it helps give it a lot of these textures. So there's some reds in here, but they're toned down a little bit, maybe with yellow ochre and some madder lake, or probably I used ultramarine blue to add down into there. And then over here, this urn of flowers just kind of brings you back up, and this angle, which is the shadow of the umbrella, brings you back up to the table too. So it's all kind of this pattern that I used to make the whole painting work and read and tell a story. And like I said, I'm not even sure if this painting is finished, but I'm going to let it sit on my easel for a while, and then I'll decide. So that concludes studio tip number 3 from the land of enchantment. So thank you for watching, and I am a Royal Talens ambassador. So if you have any questions about the Cobra mediums or the Cobra paint, I'm going to have a list in the description of the video about which colors I used for today and which mediums. And so thank you for joining me. If you're interested in learning more about my process, I have 3 videos with Lily Doll Productions, and they are all online. You can find them on my website. And studio tip number 4 is going to be the color green. I'll be sharing with you what I've learned about the Southwest color greens. So thank you for joining me, and stay safe, stay calm, and until next time, adios.